Good morning, Joy Horner here. I was just trying to sit where the sun isn't in my eyes because it is terribly sunny this morning, and it's taken me by surprise. That's a bit better, isn't it? Yeah, so on here for my regular monthly Ask the Midwife slot. And as usual, if nobody's here, well, there's always people here, but if there's nobody with any questions, I'm just going to talk about my favourite subjects, which I always do. So fire away, please put your questions in, and I'll be able to answer them. I won't be able to give you clinical diagnosis, of course, because this is on the internet. This isn't in person. I don't know your medical history. I can't check, all the observations and parameters that I normally would as a midwife. But I can give you some very good, sensible information and signpost you if you do need to get extra help anywhere. So, what's been going on in Joy's midwifery world? I have 3 clients currently, and I'm doing a training called Integrative Baby Therapy, which if you've watched me before, you'll know that I'm really quite passionate about. And I watched a wonderful live video last night, live conference on Gold Midwifery by a lovely lady whose name I really can't remember, but I did write it down, called Ruth Oshikananlu. I've probably not done that name justice, but she was a really great midwife, health visitor, who was very interested in maternal fetal bonding and attachment, and paternal fetal bonding and attachment. Yeah, so it was a really, really interesting talk, and what I liked was it's the things that people do instinctively when they're not incredibly busy. So when you're pregnant, you do tend to be curious about this little being that's growing inside you. You do tend to wonder, if it's a boy or a girl, if there's one or two. Yeah, and this sense of wonderment, I think, has been partly replaced by all the tests and scans and things that we do. Although Ruth was saying that the scans, people report that the scans actually help them to bond with their baby, probably because we lead such busy lives and we don't have the time to tune in and really, feel in touch with our babies. And if we can see the baby on a screen, it gives evidence that the baby's actually there. Because it normally occurs around the time in pregnancy where maybe the sickness symptoms are wearing off a bit, and you're just feeling normal, and you're thinking, I don't even know if I am pregnant, and that's a completely normal stage. And most people now at that stage opt for the scan, and I have to emphasize the scan is optional. You do not have to have it. That early pregnancy scan, you can if you like, and it's a very rough screening tool for a couple of genetic abnormalities. There's like 3 genetic abnormalities which you can pick up markers for at this initial scan. But just because we don't pick up a marker doesn't mean it's not there, and if we do pick up a marker, it doesn't mean it is there. They're not 100%. It's not a diagnostic test. It's called a screening test. So if one of these markers is detected, it's normal. The nuchal fold measurement at the back of baby's head, combined with a blood test, combined with your age, combined with other things, gives us a score. And if your score's above a certain amount, you're high risk. And if it's below that, it's low risk. I didn't know I was going to talk about this today. How interesting. Do chip in. Do ask me any questions. And if you get a high risk result, you then are sent for other tests that will actually diagnose if the baby has a problem or not. And they're genetic screening tests. So it would be something like an amniocentesis, where fluid is drawn from around the baby and sent off for genetic testing, because the fluid contains skin cells and things that have come off the baby that contain the baby's DNA, and we can test for genetic abnormalities that way. Yeah, and then you have to decide what you're going to do with those results. So it's not as easy as, I'll go for my 12-week scan and won't it be lovely and we'll see the baby. You have to think about these other things that are offered as well. Yeah, a lot of people do report that seeing their baby does help them feel that it's real, you know, that there is actually a baby in there and they're not imagining it, and they didn't imagine that line on the pregnancy test. So yeah, so bonding and attachment, you know, start from, well, maybe before you're pregnant. You know, if you've really longed for this child, if you've really prayed for this child, you know, you've already got an attachment to the idea of that child that you're going to really love. You may have real deep love, deep feelings for that child before it even comes into being. And how wonderful is that? Imagine if you were loved from before you even incarnated into a body. All that love. Wouldn't the world be a better place? But some of us don't. Some of us have happy incidents that happen without our planning. I've certainly been on the receiving end of that, and it's really, really nice. And perhaps once you've got over the shock of it, because it is a shock if you're not planning it sometimes, you then grow into this wonder of who this person's going to be. You know, are they going to be like their father? Are they going to be like me? What's their personality going to be like? What do they look like? And I remember it being a wondrous time. And when I had my kids, we didn't have like the 12-week scan and the 20-week scan. We had a scan to confirm that there was one baby with a heartbeat, because they weren't as technologically advanced as they are now. So I had a scan, yeah, and we certainly didn't have a sexing scan, and please don't call it a gender scan. It's a sexing scan. You know, you can see the genitalia. You cannot see if that person will be more masculine or feminine, and how they feel about that. You know, that's in their mind. That's not in their genitalia. So I want to clear that one up for a start. Gender reveal parties, load of rubbish. Sex reveal parties, genitalia reveal parties are another thing. Oh my goodness, I could go down another track with that. Why would you want to announce to the world what genitalia your baby has before it even arrives? Private, you know, it's all private. Yeah, and there are very, very good reasons for finding out the sex of babies, you know, including you just really, really want to know, and it would be lovely if you knew. And that was in Ruth's research as well, that she'd looked at, yeah, people that had sexing scans, and again, how it helps you prepare and imagine the personality of that baby. But I did it the old-fashioned way. We didn't have sexing scans back then. So I sat down and I tuned in with my baby, and I took a pink colouring pencil and I took a blue colouring pencil. I drew a picture of my baby in a neutral colour, and I just, yeah, doodled without looking at the page. I coloured and coloured and coloured, and, you know, and then I looked at the page and it was equal. So I was still left in wonderment as to, you know, what sex my baby might be. And looking after hundreds and hundreds of people in pregnancy, I know that the feelings that you can get in pregnancy are, they're varied, they're fluid. So sometimes when I go and visit people and they talk about their baby, they'll say, I had such a strong dream last night that it was a girl. I'm so convinced it's a girl. And then later in pregnancy, they'll say, you know, I said it was a girl. I've got such a strong boy feeling now. I think it's a boy. And other people who say, I haven't got a clue. My baby doesn't give me any clues whatsoever. They can be the most tuned in people in the world, and their baby's not giving away any secrets. And that's great. I actually did have a strong feeling about both of mine. And I was right, but you know, it's a 50-50 chance. I could have just guessed and got it right, but I had a really strong feeling. And that was all part of the bonding process, the attachment process, because I loved, you know, even though the first one wasn't the sex that I particularly would have chosen for a first one, yeah, you know, it gave me time to come to terms with it. And that's the other thing about sexing scans, isn't it? If your baby's not the sex that you were hoping for, it gives you time to adjust and come to terms with it, which is really important. But yeah, the excellent thing about the talk was that all the ways that you can bond and get attached to your babies are the things that we do naturally. So they're the things that pregnant people do if they're not overwhelmed with work, if they're not terribly stressed and busy with the kids, if they've actually got time to sit down and pay attention to this pregnancy, all the natural things. And sometimes if you don't have time to sit down and focus on this pregnancy, you will find yourself naturally rubbing your bump, naturally talking to your baby, particularly when baby moves. So it turns into a bit of a conversation, doesn't it? You know, baby kicks and you might push back a little bit. Baby moves in another way and you might say, oh, what are you up to in there? You know, it happens naturally. But you can expand on that if you do have the time. You can sit down, you can tune in, you can journal, you can write letters to your baby, you can sing to your baby. Wouldn't that be lovely? If you had a certain time each day where you sang to your baby, and then when baby came out, if you sang the same song, because babies can hear in utero. So that's a really nice thing you can do. You can dance with your baby. Whenever you dance, you know, you're dancing with your baby. And it's great preparation for labour, dancing. What else off the top of my head, without referring to my notes last night? It was a really good talk, which basically said that if parents are well attached to their babies, they bond with their babies really well, they love their babies really well, and that is good for everyone. Basically, families stay together, parents are happier, babies have less mental health problems, parents have less mental health problems. But it all starts in pregnancy or pre-pregnancy, pregnancy planning. You know, getting in touch with this little soul, communicating with it, imagining it. And I'm going to do some prenatal bonding sessions where we're going to do guided visualizations and some drawing to actually help people really tune into their babies, because it's really worth it. You know, babies' brains are developing at an incredible rate in utero, an incredible rate. Oh, and I did write down something last night which I thought was absolutely phenomenal. It was the amount of neurons. Here we go. 5 weeks after conception, neurons begin to form in the baby's brain. In the second trimester, 250,000 neurons are created every minute in the second trimester. Oh my goodness, no wonder people feel tired when they're pregnant. What your body's doing, isn't it amazing? Absolutely fabulous. Anyway, if you don't have any questions now, because I realise we're out of time, do put them in the chat box below, and I hope this has been useful in my rant around the houses. There's been some useful subject matter, so I hope it was useful for you. And join me for the next Ask the Midwife. Okay, bye.